Everybody, thanks for joining us. We're really excited to be partnering with the Learn and Work Ecosystem Library. We started this partnership almost a year ago now, or maybe just over a year ago, to really help bring this wealth of resources that are available in the library to not only our members, but to the public. So we're excited to have them here today. As Kara mentioned, we are going to have discussion later, so please use the Q&A for your chats and make sure to select the everyone. So if you want to make sure you're sharing your thoughts with all of attendees. This library really team wants to not only share information, but they want to hear from you to provide back. So thanks for joining. We will turn it over to Holly to give you a little bit more information about the library.
Thanks so much, Kelly, and hello, everyone. We're so glad to share with the One Ed Tech members and others who are joining the webinar today information about the Learn and Work Ecosystem Library. Before we head into an exploration of the library and how it might be useful to you, we'd like to pose some questions to set the context. First, how is searching changing? We're seeing many more competing information resources, which is confounding our search processes. So we have to ask, is it the best idea to Google first or at all? Is it best to go from websites directly if we have specific ones in mind? Our research has identified some serious challenges to navigating many websites in higher education and other sources. Many of the websites are not connected to others. They have no or very few referrals. Some have paywalls, and some are not kept up when their funding, especially when funded from grants, ends or changes. So now the question is it best to go to one of the AI engines like ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, or the various co-pilots that are cropping up? We're seeing the bots coming on strong, but there are questions about reliability and some other limitations, though we know they are and they're going to be getting better. At the library, we're facing our own challenges around particularly updating content because the field is changing so rapidly. We're exploring whether we can use AI to help automate our updating. We see that AI is changing how we find and interrelate with information. Given still how siloed much of the information is out there, we have to ask whether or not we can address the growing need for synthesis to boil disparate information pieces down to what it really means. So we'd like to suggest an evolving alternative, going to one-stop aggregator collections or digital platforms, if there is one, like the Learn and Work Ecosystem Library. Are these information sources what we're going to see more of? If we look at the list of search processes I already mentioned, maybe we could agree that to fully check out the entire landscape on any major topic, it might be best to go with an all of the above strategy, but increasingly, that's really not that feasible. It requires a lot of clicking around, time and judgment calls, and it still may not result in the best information available to us. So we're here today to show you what an aggregator like the library can do in a large area of focus, such as the Learn and Work Ecosystem, which we're going to be describing. We would welcome your thoughts about this, and in the end, you can decide what works best for your information needs. So we're going to start with a poll, then we're going to give you a quick overview of the library. Then we're going to go live to the library to show you what's there on a topic we're seeing frequently in searches. Then we're going to open it up for discussion, and we hope to hear from you, especially how and where you are acquiring information now and how helpful are the resources that you're locating to meet your information needs. So Kelly, back to you for the poll.
Yeah, so Kara will have the poll up shortly. As you're doing that, just a quick reminder, these are some questions to make sure that we're getting the information that you want to hear from us, and we want to make sure we have our information tailored. So first, we're going to ask how familiar you are with the Learn and Work Ecosystem Library. Have you visited in the last 6 months and seen the new information? When you go looking for information, where are you trying to find that information currently? Are you just going to Google? Are you going to your industry newsletters, LinkedIn? How are you finding information currently? And then last but not least, what topics are you most interested in checking out in the library? What are you looking for? What are the kinds of things that you're looking for? And it looks like you'll have to select just your top choice on that last question. So we'll give you a moment to complete those polls. As a reminder, you can always use the chat throughout if you have questions or thoughts or ideas for us throughout. I'll give you a minute to complete. If on that last question, if there's more than one topic you really want to hear about, feel free to put the others in the chat for us. We just a minute or just a second to wrap up if you haven't already. If you can't tell, we do want this to be a conversation today. We don't want to just speak at you. So feel free to jump in with questions if you have them in the chat. Like we've ended the poll and we'll try to share results. Okay, perfect. And it looks like most of you have not visited the Learn and Work Ecosystem Library before, which is what we were preparing for. So we're ready to share more information with you shortly. Or some of you have been there, but it's been longer than 6 months. So thanks to those of you who are familiar with it, but for the rest of you, you're in the right place, as well as those who have been there before. Maybe you'll learn some new tips and tricks today. So where are you currently going for your information sources right now? A lot of you are doing internet searches, looking at your industry or trade newsletters, LinkedIn, social media kind of are the top 3. And then for topics, what are you looking for? Finding frameworks, models, playbooks is definitely the top choice, followed closely by identifying trends, understanding the state of the ecosystem, as well as identifying opportunities for collaboration with other organizations, kind of our top 3 areas. So that's really good for us to know as we look at what kind of content we have, because there is a wealth of resources there, especially frameworks, models, playbooks, et cetera, to guide your work. So at this point, I'll turn it back over to Holly and Matthew for the overview of the library.
Thanks so much. And we'll be coming back to, I think, some of your views when we get the discussion. Pretty fascinating. So here's what you'll see when you go to the library. First, the main page. You can pick your language of choice. There are 12 languages possible. Here's the front page in English.
Thanks, Holly. And here is a screenshot of that same page translated into Spanish. And then we recently were reviewing some of our analytics and noticed that we had a number of visitors from Korea. And so we toggled on the Korean language translation option as well. It's one of the 12.
So our content is organized by 12 key components of the Learn and Work ecosystem. We conducted research several years ago to come up with a way to frame the ecosystem, because the ecosystem, frankly, is much more than the credential providers and the employers that a lot of us typically think of as the ecosystem. And we wanted to try to portray the largesse and the complexity of the true ecosystem, particularly in the US. There really isn't time to provide that level of information, but we'd be happy to share that more during the discussion time if folks want to ask questions about that. Or if you send us a note, we'd be happy to provide you some of the research that went behind coming up with 12.
And here are those 12 key components. We have a wheel graphic that depicts them here within the ecosystem. When people talk about ecosystems, they often talk about what an ecosystem looks like when it's functioning well and when it's healthy. And so for a functioning, healthy ecosystem, we believe that all of the components need to be connected and coordinated so that individuals can move seamlessly through the marketplace using a variety of credentials to communicate the skills and knowledge that they've acquired in multiple settings like school, work, service, self-study. And then schools need to be able to count learning that is obtained outside of academic settings and put that towards degrees or other credentials. Employers need to have more detailed and externally validated information for hiring, reskilling, and upskilling workers, and the public at large needs to be informed about the Learn and Work ecosystem. It's not a healthy ecosystem if only some of those components are working well. Here are those 12 key components again, maybe a little easier to read when they're all facing the same direction. And when you're at the site on the homepage, if you scroll down below the fold, so to speak, these are there and they are live links, so you could select any one of those components and read more information describing that area of the ecosystem. And then we get into the heart of our collection. The content in the library focuses on topics, initiatives, organizations, and then we have indexes that are dynamic and updated as new content is added to the library, and we have our glossary of key vocabulary terms in the ecosystem.
So these are several of the key features that you're going to find at the library, like information about several special projects that we're embarked on with some special user groups like AACRAO, which many of you know is the leading organization of registrars and admission officers in the US. We have a newsroom of articles, blogs, media, and reports. Our librarian, Matthew, is here to help with searches if anyone needs that. All of our content is linked to external sites because, frankly, we see our role partly as air traffic controller. Many websites that you go to don't send you elsewhere for more information. We started from the beginning deciding that we wanted to provide enough information to help you with your information needs, but then point you in the right direction for more information. We include timestamps, so you'll know how recently we've worked on the content. We can accommodate disabled users. You've already seen that content is available in 12 different languages. We have several types of searching options, keyword, use of our AI bot, which we'll say more about in a minute, and the ability to filter by more than 20 different stakeholder groups. And there are lots of pages to explain the history of the library, our advisory board, staff team, our commitment to open access through Creative Commons licensing, and how this really is a wiki model open to community participation.
So now I'm going to take us out of PowerPoint and onto the web. We're going to go live to the library website and demo a search or two. So bandwidth allowing, this should be a smooth process. Here we are back on the live homepage. One of the topics of common interest that we've been seeing searches conducted for in the library is around the area of dual or concurrent enrollment. This is of interest to K-12 schools, higher education institutions, and state policymakers. And so that's going to be our sample search today. I'm going to just come right into this search box and do a simple keyword search. I'll type in dual enrollment, and we'll generate a page of results that you'll see laid out in tile form here. So you can see there is under the title of each one of these results in color, it's sorted the different categories of content on the library, topics, initiatives, glossary terms, etc. So let's start just by taking a look at our glossary entry for concurrent and dual enrollment. So I'll select from our tiles, and you can see this is just a brief dictionary style definition of the term. On the other hand, if we go back to our search result list and I select our dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment topic, you'll see this is a much more detailed article. So we have it tagged with key components and stakeholder groups in the ecosystem. This would work out to a few pages if it were printed on paper, but if we scroll through this article, we can see that we cover the overview of this topic and try to pull out some recent developments and areas of interest. We can see growth in programs in dual and concurrent enrollment that we have collected some statistics on, relation to the ecosystem, etc. And many of our articles will have what we're calling relational maps. These are placed at the bottom of the articles. At the very top of this one, you might have noticed there was a anchor link that you could just jump directly down to the bottom of the page. But this is what the relational maps look like, where we have a central topic identified, and then we have collected glossary, topics, initiatives, and organizations that are related to that. And we will be going into more detail in a couple moments about our relational mapping, the process behind that. So I will just show you that this is where you can find it on the page. The other way that we can search on our website is to use our chat bot. So I'll return to the home page. Here is our AI library assistant. You'll also notice in the bottom right-hand corner, there's this floating icon that you can access the bot by selecting. And so here I'm just going to ask it, sort of using natural language. Here's a query I wrote in advance. What are examples of dual enrollment programs, and why are dual enrollment programs useful if they are? I'll submit that to our chat bot. And you can see it is pulling examples from the library collection, highlighting a couple specific dual enrollment programs, and then it's doing some synthesis of information across the site to answer that question in a conversational manner. Its sources with hyperlinks are here at the bottom, and you can continue this conversation. You can interrogate the answer it just provided to go a little more into detail on any topic. But this is the conversational path into the collection that uses the chatbot. So these are just a few ways you can search. Keyword searches. If you experiment on the site, you'll also find there's some advanced searching where you can use filters and facets to browse the collection, or you can engage in conversation with the bot like this. And so with that demonstration done, I think I will now return to the slideshow.
So
Okay.
one of the things we've been doing since the library launched, seems like forever ago, December 1, 2022, we're not even quite 2 years old. And we were watching then, and we're still watching very carefully now, the growth of the library. First, the growth of content since launch. Next slide. The growth has been nearly fourfold. And you can see the areas. This doesn't cover every bit of the content. This is the key artifacts that we think most people are interested in. The 12 key components, the topics, glossary terms, initiatives or special projects, organizations, and the maps. And we're now rapidly moving. We'll talk about that in a minute or so, our map effort. And then we also have request forms that folks can submit where they'd like to see changes made, or if they think that they have information that's not at the library, they'd like to be at the library, there's an easy way to fill in a form, and then we can add content. So that sort of makes it more essentially a wiki model. The other thing is that we've had a tremendous amount of growth, thankfully, of users since the launch back in 2022. And we haven't started marketing yet because we didn't feel like it was quite time to market, because we didn't feel like the library there was enough there yet. So we think we're at that place now where we can really start trying to get the word out about the library's potential uses. So the growth of users has increased about 4,000% since we started tracking the distinct tracked users. We're especially watching the number of return visitors because we don't want people to come just once and never come back again. And so we're now seeing 3,700 return visitors. We don't know if that's a good number or not, but we're wanting to see how does that work when people come back again, and we hope again to use the content. And then we are looking at, for example, the number of sessions that users are undertaking, more than 39,000 to date. And really, and as we go more into the analytics, we're trying to understand how the library is being used, particularly now that we have our AI bot, and Matthew's going to talk a little more about that. Bot's still pretty young and new, and we're wanting to see what are people querying for, and can the bot really be truly helpful. So you saw one of the maps during our live search, the one on dual enrollment. Briefly, we're now moving to rapidly develop relational maps that can depict how initiatives like special projects that are working to improve the ecosystem relate to organizations that are doing the work, relate to glossary terms, relate to topics, relate to the key components, those 12 of the ecosystem. And the point of maps is really that they show connections within the ecosystem. They have active links when you go to any of our maps to the various artifacts at the library. They're generated automatically as new content is added to the collection. So that's a really helpful plus we have by working with AI and a lot of the other apps that we have now centered at the library. So here's one of the maps as an example on verifications and record keeping. This is, a hot topic in this area is the development of learning and employment records, or LERs, digital wallets, and passport portfolios. So there's a lot of folks working in this space, and we're hoping that the map is a good way for folks who are in this to know about the others that they might not know about that are also working in this space. So far we have 13 maps in our map index, and of course the ones that we have as we're developing them, they'll be posted at the end of the various artifacts. Here's an example, a second one of the National Skills Forward initiative that many of you know about. And here's a third one. And the third example is international, because this one is from Australia, some work on micro-credentialing, because we want folks to know that there's a growing amount of content at the library on global developments in the learning work ecosystem, especially around credentialing and learning mobility among countries, especially coming out of Europe. So you're going to see more and more content about what's happening internationally around topics that, that are really at the library.
And there are 3 recent developments I'll just highlight here at the library. We have launched a research center. We have begun engaging in special projects with some other organizations and groups. And then, as we've alluded to, we have been developing this AI library assistant. So the research center is divided into 6 virtual rooms. We have the library lens. This is where we publish reports on usage and trends that we are seeing within the library collection. We have our professional development hub. This is for resources like webinars and our upcoming newsletter. There is a consultation with a librarian room. I am the librarian, so this is where users can seek assistance with me. Online newspaper through a partnership with the online publication, the EvoLLution. We are highlighting articles that are relevant to the learn and work ecosystem. We have our special projects room where we have collaborations with other organizations and groups. And then we are developing a researcher showcase as a space to promote scholarly work in this area. Oops. So the special projects, I'm not going to go through these in the interest of time, but if you visit the Research Center and the special project page, this is where you can see a running tally of our current and upcoming collaborations. And each one of these, if you select it, will lead you to a page with some additional information about these collaborations. And then I'll just speak a little bit about some of our branding and logos that you might see. We have our ampersand is what we have sort of recruited as our mascot for the site. We like the way that that symbol represents the interconnected nature of the ecosystem. So if you were to favorite us in a browser, you would see that icon related to the library. And then to represent our AI chatbot, we took that ampersand, we put a headset on it. This represents the importance of listening and trying to separate signal from noise in this increasingly crowded space. So that ampersand is our mascot. You might come to recognize him as something of a brand representative for the library.
Except the bot is not a him. That's the only thing I have to say.
Oh, okay.
we were gonna come up with a name for our mascot, but we were afraid we didn't want to say we didn't want to get into any gender issues, so we're not sure about gender issues in the bot. So what we would like to share as we kind of close by highlighting some early lessons learned from our work and on the library was, as I said, we're only not quite 2 years in. And we've touched on some of this at the beginning of the webinar because we keep asking ourselves, how is searching changing and is the library going to be relevant going forward? Or are bots going to take over? We won't even need libraries, or libraries will be there as databases. But how will our information retrieval systems look in the future? And we don't have answers, but we continue to want to ask the questions. How is searching changing? So we're seeing that we're facing many challenges to finding and navigating websites. And our studies of websites, we've done 2 little studies to visit some key websites, particularly in higher ed around the country, to collect information in the library. And we noted that many of them are not connected. Some of them have paywalls. Some have not kept up when their grant funding ends or changes. And this makes it a little difficult to count on websites being there. That may not be the way we're going to be focusing on key synthesis and collection in the future. There are many more competing information resources. We're calling them special collection libraries. That's kind of our view of what's being put together. And that's going to be confounding all of our search processes increasingly. We're seeing the chat engines coming on strong. There's always that question, of course, about reliability, but we see they're getting better and we assume that they will come to take their place in our lives. We're just not sure quite how yet. We're facing our own challenges, of course, about updating library content because the field is really changing so rapidly. And there is so much discrete or siloed information out there that we're seeing the need for synthesis. How do we boil down what this all means in an age in which things, the units of learning are just increasing so rapidly? AI is really changing how we find and interrelate with information. We need better navigation pathways. We're not sure what they should be, but we're thinking repositories, digital collections like the library can be really helpful as an aggregator of key information in very complex topics especially. So there's no doubt more of these. We're really hopeful that in the open discussion, we'll hear from you about some of the changes that you're seeing as you try to pull in information to do your jobs better. So here's contact information from Matthew and me. We'd love to hear from you. And we really want to thank you for listening to our pretty quick overview of the library. We are happy to go into any more details if you'd like. And we have, Kelly, we're going to turn it back to you for the open discussion. And we have 4 questions we hope might come up. And Matthew's going to drop it into the chat. But first is happy to take any general questions, of course. We'd like to see if you think the library would be helpful to you and your colleagues and in what ways you think it might be helpful to you. We'd welcome suggestions about ways we could improve it based on your information needs and what you've just seen already from taking a look at it. And I would say most important, we'd like to learn how and where you are acquiring information right now and how you're seeing searching changing to meet your own information needs. So Kelly, I think it's back to you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for sharing this information. And I would just say, as someone who looked at it when it first launched, I was like, okay, this is a good idea. There's not much here yet, but you have really grown, and it's a great resource. I still have my folder of bookmarks in my web browser that I have as some of my go-to resources. But I also find that those are outdated. So that I like the idea that this library is here, it stays current, but it also has those connections. So many times we know in this, especially in the learn and work ecosystem, there are so many different points of entry and collaborative opportunities between organizations, even within an organization, to understand, like you had mentioned registrars earlier. Maybe I come from the registrar perspective, but I need to know what continuing ed is thinking about it, or career services, to be able to pull those relationships together in the library is so valuable. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat at this point. I would say, as we've talked with members about it, the idea of not only be able to do the keyword search, but the new AI bot to be able to ask those questions and say, what are the trends, or what are the benefits of this, or even just the definitions, because there are lots of words in this space, and sometimes to have that consistent definition to go, oh, this is what people mean when they say wallet, LER, things like that. So a lot of people right now, okay, so in the chat we see Kale and Learn as 2 options, as well as the EvoLLution newsletter for where they're going. I would say this is a great place to add to your list of opportunities. But I know you have a partnership with EvoLLution. You had mentioned that. Do you have resources from Kale or Learn in here? Do you know?
Yes, I think they're in as organizations, and then if there are special projects or special initiatives, and some people have asked us literally just last week, what we mean, could we provide a little more detail about what the word initiative means, which is an interesting question in and of itself, because we thought initially it meant special projects. And honestly, when we've looked at our collection, we're not, we only have getting up there to close to 400. There's probably thousands of these. And our take is about 80% of what we call special projects are funded by foundations and federal grants, which is it's a little worrisome to me personally to think that the innovation landscape of the US is dependent on foundations and federal grants, because those come and go. And yet the reforms that we all know we need to redesign our system to be more helpful to students and to employers and to policymakers, et cetera, it can't be just done over 14 months or 18 months or 2 years even, and then subject to, oh, the grant is gone, our website now is going to languish or go away. We don't know how to keep the work going. So like that's a reflection on what are initiatives. But so there are special projects. There are also studies which have been done that result in some major reports. So those are under initiatives, and we may have to spell that out a bit more. And then there's a growing number of playbooks, and someone mentioned in the poll they're interested in playbooks. There's a lot of playbooks, guides, how-to, workbooks, frameworks. These words seem to be to us just about the same thing, but people call them these different things. So we're trying to capture those and code them so that you can know there might be 5 playbooks around non-credit to credit pathway development, or around micro-credentialing and how to, particularly for states, how to provide the kind of policy work that might be helpful to the higher ed institutions and to K-12 institutions that are moving into more shorter term credentialing along with traditional. So we think it's there. If those of you here, if you go to the site and you don't see your organization or your project that you know you're working on there, fill in one of those forms or contact Matthew or me, let us know so we can add content, because every week we're adding quite a bit more content, and that's just the name of the game with the library. Add more content, curate it, and then keep it updated, and then let you all know about it. So that's those sort of the spaces that we're working in.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned some of the special projects, and as you know, the LER accelerator work, that's a higher ed focused area that One Ed Tech is one of the many higher ed organizations working on. We're really looking forward to leveraging the library because we all have resources that all live on our websites, to the point where we all had to do our own inventories of what resources we actually had before we went into the project, to then go, okay, how do these relate and where do they connect? And now when they live in the library, that relationship and all of that stuff will be evident to everyone instead of having to have that conversation. And I do think some of you on the call will have resources that aren't here that should be. You've created your own resource guide. You have a taxonomy for your program, things like that you would want to share with others. Matt just put, or the Learn and Work Ecosystem Library just put a link in for how you can submit new content there.
One of the things that we point out that it's still an undeveloped part of the library is as an archive. And we early on thought that with so many websites, especially, but projects that are funded by grants, and then the grant goes away, the websites are languishing, but they may not have been updated for 4 or 5 years, but they still have some good content. And we're thinking that the archive can capture it technologically and put it in the archive. So people like researchers and journalists especially might want to have access to information that we might think is old, but it may still be useful, particularly to understand the growth of a whole field. So we're in the process of building out the archive where we'd have key historical documents. Many of them are going to be PDFs that you can't find anymore. I don't know where you find them. So we want to be able to collect those and have them at the library. And then we want to collect those static websites that maybe still ought to be available. And we can do that pretty easily given technological advances. So it's pretty easy to do that, to collect them. So we would, ask you all, if you know of such sites, we want to start putting out some queries to say, let us know, because we in this next year, we want to start building out the archive component of the library.
Perfect. So I think one thing, I'm waiting to see if anybody else has questions. Feel free to put those in. I think something that you alluded to, but we didn't highlight. There's a lot of places that can curate resources, but not many of them have an actual librarian to help make sense of that information. So I think that's a real power to this library, because yeah, we are not good at that naturally. Usually there is a skill set that really helps make it very viable for you to be able to actually find the resources you want. You know, how many times a certain Google search I can do to get to the resource I want because I've done it enough times, but I shouldn't have to, use the right, right connection of words to get what I need to. So that's really powerful in, I think, this tool.
And one of our plans this next year is to reach out and start doing webinars, we hope, for librarians both at K-12, community colleges, universities, so that, and public libraries, so folks can let people who might be searching for things that fall within the learner ecosystem, and not everybody knows what learning ecosystem even means, but for people who are looking to understand education better, or the systems, or the policies, or how workforce and employment is changing, how training is changing, to help them know that there is a special purpose aggregator collection, and go to the library where we'll have a lot of glossary terms. And we hope that we increasingly come up more and more in Google searches, which is, we're seeing a bit of that growth, and we're thinking that that'll be a good thing. So if people do use regular Google searches, the library will crop up. And when it does, we hope that you're going to see the ampersand signal. So you'll know if you see the ampersand that is the library.
All right, I will do one last call for questions. While we pause for anybody else who might have questions, I would just add that as a reminder, our Digital Credentials Summit is coming up in the first week of March, March 3rd through the 5th in Phoenix, Arizona. If you've got projects that not only you should submit to the library, but you're interested in sharing at our summit, our call for proposals is currently open and does close on Friday. Holly and team have been there in the past to share some of their great resources. Hopefully, we will see some more great sessions from not only the library, but also people who have resources in the library. So if you're interested, we will get a link in the chat for you to be able to access the summit if you're interested in learning more about that. There it is. You do have until Friday to submit a session idea. The demo and the AI bot were great. We heard that as a chat. So thank you very much for sharing that. I think as we hear about AI, good and bad, I think this is a great use of how to actually leverage it well for not only you, but your other institutions. With that, I think we will wrap. So thank you very much for sharing this information with not only our One Ed Tech members, but also those others who joined us. We are excited to have this resource available for people to be able to really make sense of what they're hearing and be able to get the information they need to have quality programs. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, everybody.